grew up in Los Angeles. Dennis Prager is my father. And I felt more at home in a broken down trailer, hitting a meth pipe while I'm drunk, being resentful of the life I have. My name is Aaron Prager, and this is my story. I grew up in Los Angeles, California. I was adopted at birth. Growing up with Dennis as my father, I was very fortunate to have the upbringing that I did. I never wanted for anything. I had nothing to complain about. When I was young, we had my older sister, my older brother, and then me. The age differences between my sister and myself were 16 years, and my brother and I are 9.5, I think 10 years. So by the time I was 8 years old, I was really essentially kind of being raised as like an only child in a way. If my father and I ever disagreed on something, he'd want to hash it out. He always went back to the Bible, where Abraham's allowed to argue with God. And that was his philosophy, is like, listen, you can do whatever you want. You can't do it here. And you're going to do what I say, but you can argue your points. And he did stand by that. My father did take me to temple, to shul every Saturday. When I was there, I was the wild child. But I remember Friday nights were always Shabbat dinner at the house. I loved the family aspect of it. But religion, for me, I really started developing almost a resentment against it. My parents divorced when I was 12, 13 years old. No age for a child is easy for divorce, but 12, 13 was tough because I was old enough to see what was happening, but I was too young to process the nuances of it. And through that, I really started to develop a negative outlook towards things. Now, I wouldn't say that's the catalyst for where my life started spiraling downhill, but there was definitely one of the data points I could look back at now and be like, this started to change the way I viewed the world. I remember the first time I ever got really intoxicated. I was about 12 years old. That's the first time I ever had a drink. It was this feeling of, I have arrived at my destination. This is the piece that I had been missing my entire life. I no longer felt socially awkward. I no longer felt a overwhelming sense of inadequacy compared to my father's successes and my brother's successes. I never felt like when I was drunk, I had to measure up to anybody else. I was an introvert for the most part. I was the guy who felt alone in a crowded room. But give me a few drinks, I will talk to anyone. I think I went to 6 high schools total, got into playing music. I was a drummer. I got into metal, started screaming into a microphone for a bit, jumping around on stage. And that was an environment that was very conducive to my desire for and an affinity with booze, because it was socially acceptable. And it was like, oh yeah, the crazier you get, the more outlandish people want to pay to go see you be even more crazy. So I can't tell you when it switched from being a party to an addiction, but I can tell you the exact moment where I realized, uh-oh, this is getting away from me. And that's when I woke up and my hand was doing this. I was waking up with cold sweats. I was waking up having seizures. Freshman year, I ended up in one of those troubled teen wilderness programs, because my parents knew something was going on with me. And I made it about a week after leaving that program before I picked up a drink again. There are all these things that I said I wasn't going to do that I inevitably crossed the line with. Oh, I'm going to drink, but I won't drink on the weekdays. Okay, I drink on the weekdays. And then it's, oh, I won't do cocaine. Okay, I do cocaine. Then it's, I won't shoot cocaine. Then I'm shooting cocaine. Oh, definitely won't touch meth, because I love meth. After I graduated, my mom and I lived in an apartment. Eventually she was like, you got to do something. And I'm like, okay, thinking in my head, what's something that I can do where it's socially acceptable to be drunk all the time, blow lines of cocaine on the regular? I'm going to go to culinary school. And that's when I moved out. So my mom paid for school. My dad paid for the apartment. And that was my first taste of being on my own. I was like, this is cool. But at the same time, I didn't earn anything. I didn't understand what the real world was. If I had gone to bed the night before, I'm in trouble to begin with, because I wake up and I'm in full-blown alcohol withdrawal, risking alcoholic seizure. I weigh 92 pounds. My kidney is a mess. I'm yellow. I was very heavily involved with amphetamines, cocaine, anything that made people go fast. I was like, give me more of that. Using those substances to keep me awake, I had a little pocket breathalyzer as well, because I had to maintain a certain blood alcohol threshold at all times, or I would risk alcoholic withdrawal, alcoholic seizure, all that type of stuff. Yeah, it was a full-time job. I dropped out, drunk all the time, blown lines of cocaine, no desire to get a job. I didn't go to my grandfather's funeral. I made up some excuse. I had a deadline for a job that I did not have because I had run out of uppers. I would have crashed on the flight and it would have been a whole disaster. So I'm overwhelmed with shame. I have no path in my life, screwing over whoever gets in my way, getting worse and worse and worse, more spiritually bankrupt day after day, getting sicker and sicker and sicker, all while the demon is getting louder and louder and louder. And every night I would pray that I wouldn't wake up the next day. I prayed every night that this just end. My mom died when I was 21. It's hard to put into words because I wasn't there. Physically, I was there, but I loved her in a way that cut through a lot of the fallacies that I had in my head. Being in active addiction, the people I felt closest to me in a way, they weren't speaking the same language as me. I'm like, please just ask me how my day is going. And they're like, why don't you have your life together? But my mother never did that. And it's sad that she never got to see me sober. Being what I believed to be my confidant at the time, I didn't know how to live without her. But I had a powerful experience with my mother after I got sober. I was able to go to her gravesite and tell her all the things that I had realized I had done to her and apologize. Shortly after that, I got a message. Turns out this is my biological half-sister, and she gave me my biological mother's information. So I book a flight to go up to the boonies of Washington State. I get there, we're in the car together, and she goes, hey, do you want to stop by the liquor store? Or I'm like, you bet I want to stop by the liquor store. This is awesome, right? Where my parents been like this the entire time. Then we get back to her trailer. She goes to the back, and I smell and hear something a little familiar. So I kind of peeked my head around to the bathroom, and it was just a curtain. And she's got a meth pipe. And she kind of looked at me and goes, yeah, huh? And I'm like, I have arrived. I am home. I grew up in Los Angeles. Dennis Prager is my father. I was attending the White House, meeting presidents. And I felt more at home in a broken down trailer, hitting a meth pipe from my biological mother while I'm drunk, being resentful of the life I have in LA. For me personally, there has to be some kind of biological component to this. I've met my birth mother my entire life, and we have the same two drugs of preference, meth and booze. So after a while, I did not feel good about how things were going with my biological mother and the way I was living, realizing that I was the only person to blame for my problems. Was it my father? Was it the fact that my mother died? It wasn't because of my siblings. It wasn't because of anything else. My problems were of my own making. And that was my rock bottom, because I looked around and I had no one else to blame except for myself. That was the turning point. That was step 0 in my recovery. I called my father. He shows up at my door. He goes, we're going to the airport. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, we're going to rehab. And under normal circumstances, I would have screw off and slammed the door in his face. But I didn't. I could look back now and be like, yeah, it's God working in my life right there. This would be my 3rd serious attempt at getting sober. So I'm in detox. I slept like I had never slept before. And I wake up and I'm dealing now with the next 28 days in a primary care treatment facility. And it was one of my first experiences with real gratitude. It was an amazing experience. I had one of the greatest counselors. He's one of the men who saved my life. It helped me get my feet underneath me, but I still didn't know how to live. So leaving extended care, I went to a halfway house. Met another person in my life I could identify as an angel and someone who saved my life. I worked in the back of his shul for a kosher catering company. And I remember getting my first paycheck. I felt a sense of accomplishment like I had never had before. And then that kind of morphed into me wanting to do more in the recovery field. So I got a job at the treatment center that I went to because I got sober at 23. For all intents and purposes, that's kind of where my life started. So I'm almost 9 years sober now. Funny how that works, right? You venture outside of what you think is like what I know the best for myself. I know everything. And you venture outside that, and I end up meeting my wife. And we have a beautiful, beautiful little girl now. I want to be able to be a good father. So I'm freaked out already, that my daughter potentially has this demon lurking in her future. God forbid. But all I can do as a parent is take mitigation efforts. And the best thing that I've come to is keeping that open line of communication. And that's why I started a show. I really wanted to be able to carry a message. I have the unique ability as somebody in recovery to help somebody else who is in this position. I see time and time again family members thinking that they could solve all the problems. It usually comes in the form of finances. That's called enablement. All that does is continue to help that person with the life that they're living right now. So there's a big thing to be said about not giving up on them, but understanding as well that you need to separate at some point as well. Throughout this whole process, I went from being raised in a Jewish household to straying away from religion, and then through a spiritual journey, I should say, have come to have a deeper connection than I had previously, than I really ever did. The underlying spiritual principles of Judaism is what I believe holds me and my wife's marriage together actually the most. It's one of the most beautiful things that we have in our home now. We have Shabbos dinner every Friday night. So when I made amends to my father, I remember what he said to me. And he said, Aaron, continue to live your life and continue to do it right. And more importantly, be there when called upon. I'm grateful that my father, that he never gave up on me. I really would not have blamed him for giving up on me. But he didn't. He was the one who didn't prioritize being my friend over being my parent, which was challenging for me at the time. As an adult now, I could look back at that and say it was one of the most valuable things, if not the most, that made me who I am today, because all the things he would tell me ended up playing a huge role in my self-identity, not just in sobriety, but as a man. And slowly but surely, putting God at the front of my life, I get to be there and present for my family. Through my father's injury, I got to be there, present in a clear state of mind with the family to support them, to support him. That's never something I thought that I would be able to do. I used to look at things like I have to do things, and I would challenge everybody watching this. Rather than saying, I have to do this, say, I get to do this. I get to be a father. I get to be a husband. I get to be a son, a brother. I get to do these things. If there's anybody out there who's dealing with this currently, don't give up. Because if you give up, you are robbing not just yourself, but the world of a light. Thank you for watching this video. To keep PragerU videos free, consider making a tax-deductible donation.